Okay, so now we've got our image all digitally composed and ready to go. It's time to put some paper on a gator board so we have something to paint on. I'm going to be using Kilimanjaro 300 pound today. I'm using rough because I want a little bit of tooth on my paper. Everybody has their own way of attaching their paper, stapling, stretching, wetting. I use the paper pretty much just the way that it comes, but I am going to tape it down, and I'd like to share just a couple little tips on how I do this. Maybe they'll help you out a little. Here's our Kilimanjaro. Lovely, lovely paper. Great sizing, easy to work with. It looks great. Let's go with this side. Basically, when I'm taping my paper down, I start with the long sides first, because you want your paper to lie as flat as possible. So I'm going to go about 1/4 inch border and lay that down. I always leave a little tab at the end, just makes it easier to pull up when you're ready to take it off. And here's the big tip. To get the paper to lay flat, if you tape the long side on one side and then tape the opposite side down, again with about 1/4 inch borders, attack the tape down onto the paper and then lift it up. And then I'll take my hand like this and smooth it across, laying it down nice and flat as I go. Now my paper's laying flat. Put my little tabs on the end. Burnish the edges real good so it sticks, so it doesn't come lifting up on you later. And now we can do the short ends. Same thing, a little tab on the end. Make sure and burnish it real good. About 1/4 inch borders. Now our paper is ready to go. So it's time to paint the monarch butterfly. We're going to be using Brusho for the background and to do the foliage. And for any of you that have ever painted foliage, it can be a little bit overwhelming. I'm going to show you a very easy and really fun way to make your backgrounds come alive with a minimal amount of effort. One of the things I always teach when you're doing your central image or your foreground and your background, try not to paint them separately. When we paint the foreground and background separate, you tend to get a cutout sort of effect. So it looks like somebody cut something out of paper and just glued it on top of something else. You can get halos around things, or even worse, you get outlines, which looks very unreal. So for this background, we're going to start by sprinkling some water in generously and adding the Brusho, green Brusho, for the foliage. And we're going to let that overlap onto the main image a little bit, which, if anything, will just make the wings look a little more translucent. So here we go. I'm going to be using, again, the Pseudo Squirrel. It's a synthetic mop brush. It's by Cheap Joe's, and it's a wonderful brush. And I'm going to want to put just tons and tons of water on here, and I'm basically going to dribble it like this. Now, you don't want to throw the water, because if you throw the water, you'll get a splatter kind of pattern. I really just want to dribble on lots and lots of water. Another fun way to do this is to take a squirt bottle and turn it upside down and squirt it like this, because this, again, it's just going to put big drops of water everywhere. But I'm going to start in, and I want to get just good puddles of water. This later is going to turn into our background, and I'll show you how to link this up and make it look like foliage. Now, normally I recommend that you get your colors ready ahead of time and have them on a separate piece of paper. But I know that I'm just going to be sprinkling a little bit of green here. And so I've got my colors already set out. We're going to use moss green and leaf green for the foliage. And we might add a little bit of yellow in there just to put a little sunshine. And then for the red flowers, and I'm looking at my image over here on my iPad, for the red flowers or the pinkish flowers, I'm going to use vermilion, scarlet, and crimson. And I'm going to blend those on a piece of scratch paper first so I can deliver them onto the painting and get a nice mix. And you notice I'm not trying to go around the butterfly. I'm actually dripping a little bit of the water onto it, and that's okay. Again, I don't want my foreground or my central image, which is our butterfly, to be cut out looking. So it's all right if we get some green foliage over the butterfly. I'm getting a good amount of water on here in nice big puddles. I think what helps this to look like foliage is once I get this on, I'm going to go through and lightly connect, and again holding the brush like a magic wand from the end instead of choking up on it like a pencil like you would do detail. I'm going to hold my brush from the end like this. I'm just going to let it dance around right off of the page, connecting these little pools of water together, just like plants, just like vines might do in real life. And the idea is to leave lots of white spaces. One of the most important things, I just love this. Whenever you paint trees or foliage, here's a great tip. Always leave holes for the birds to fly through. You always want to leave nice white spaces in your foliage and your trees. It lets them breathe, it lets your background, the light shine through, and it's just fun. Now down here, these are going to be red. So I'm going to add a little extra water. And again, I'm just dribbling big drops of water everywhere. And then connecting the shapes up. I'm going to take a paper towel and just gently, ever so gently, because again, don't want this to look outlined, might take just a little of the water off inside the monarch. Not too much. What you don't want to do is just drop water around the outside of your central image, our little monarch here, because that would make it look like it was cut out. I'll go right through. It wouldn't look natural. It would be contrived. All right, so here's a nice piece of scratch paper. I'm going to get my 2 pots of Brusho. This is a leaf green. And I think of these like chili peppers. A little bit of this goes a long ways. And this is the moss green. And by putting this on the scratch paper first and then delivering it into the painting, it gives me so much more control. And let's add just a little bit of gamboge, which is a yellow, just for a little sunlight in that foliage. And I would mix that a little bit on the paper here, and let's create a background. You can see the particles just hitting, and what magic. All of a sudden, it just comes to life. And again, a little goes a long ways. And it doesn't take a lot. Now while this is still wet, I've got some flowers here. Add a little more water. Let's take the reds and do a little scarlet. And these are very powerful. Some vermilion. Oh my. And some crimson. Well, let's make some pretty flowers for our friend to land in. There's a little here. There's a little here. And there might be some off in the distance, just teeny bits. Look at that color explosion. Isn't this exciting? So now I'm gonna have to let this rest and dry for a little bit. And we can come back and we'll paint our central figure here. But this is a beautiful, very open background that's letting the light come through.